Hello and welcome. I'm Darren. And first I'm going to say I apologise if I haven't been in front of the camera for the past couple of weeks. I had surgery and it's kind of a little bit uncomfortable being sat in this position. So I'm probably not going to be making a huge amount of videos until, or certainly this type of content, until I've made kind of a bit of a better recovery. So after getting that out of the way, the RTX 50 series, or no, that's probably not fair. So there seems to be a lot of negativity towards NVIDIA again. A lot has come from the RTX 50 series and availability, prices. DLSS 4 has triggered a lot of people, like in a very strange way, very strange reactions to that. Why, I don't know. But yeah, so basically the whole NVIDIA AMD fanboy wars have reignited again. And I'm going to probably go through one of the topics of arguments today, which is the color argument. And that is that the colors are way better on AMD than what they are on NVIDIA. Now, I don't really know how to go into this because there's a lot to unfold within this argument. And what I will say is I don't mess around with colors. I don't mess around with the colors on my NVIDIA GPU. I don't mess around with the colors on my AMD GPU. I've never found a reason to mess around with the colors. I have no problem with the colors how they perform basically at default settings. So out of the box, turn on your GPU, play the game. I always find that the games that I would expect to be like vibrant and colourful, look vibrant and colourful, the games that I'd expect to have a more real world, realistic look and view. Some people might say looks washed out. I personally think it looks, I look outside, it looks pretty washed out. So I kind of see that as how it's intended. I actually believe that the default settings are probably how the game is intended to be played, if your obviously monitor is calibrated correctly. I don't play generally in HDR. I'm running on a 4K screen that I wouldn't run it on HDR. It doesn't have the brightness for HDR. It's not set up for HDR. It's just a 4K display. I do have a HDR display in the other room, but I use that on my sim racing rig, and I very rarely use that on HDR. I just generally play on your standard sRGB. So I'm not a color person. What I will say is, for my actual trade, I'm a vehicle painter. So color matching and understanding colors and tones in a certain degree is what I do in my job every single day of the week. When it comes to actually on electronics, probably not so much. Basically because I just don't mess around with them. It's one of those, like, you turn your monitor on and you've got your certain color profiles. You click whatever kind of looks pretty decent to you. Same with your TV. You'll have your different color profiles and you kind of click through one, put on the content that you'd normally watch. And the thing is, obviously, from a different point of view, I don't know how this argument comes apart, because you can have, say for instance, a Sony TV for your entire life, and you might use that Sony TV and you might go into the menu, which where the menu is on the Sony TV, and you adjust these certain colors for your Sony TVs, and it's worked perfectly for you after you've adjusted those colors to be what you wanted them to be. And then you might move to a Panasonic TV and it's a different menu and you don't know how to understand it. You just think that it doesn't look right, and then you say that the colors were better on the Sony TV. That doesn't mean that the colors were better on the Sony TV. That just means that the colors that are on the Sony TV that you yourself adjusted and set to your own liking, you don't understand the way to do it on the Panasonic TV. So I've just done a video. I swapped over to the AMD system. That's obviously running on a 7900 XTX with a 7800 X3D. And I've done like a recording where I've just stood in a certain spot. I'm on Alan Wake 2. I thought it would probably be a better video. I just happen to have that game recorded on both systems, and there is no kind of, as far as I'm aware, there's no kind of dynamic lighting or clouding or day, night and time cycle to interfere with doing a recording. Obviously, you could be in a game where you've got cloud cover, like something like Red Dead Redemption 2, where you constantly have obviously a day and night cycle and obviously cloud cover and all different types of weather variables, trying to get two recordings stood in the same place without something happening, different shadows happening, different weather things happening, would be a complete nightmare. So Alan Wake 2 I thought would probably work. It probably doesn't show up enough, but it won't show. I couldn't really find an area which would show a massive range of colours, but I believe it shows enough to show that I see no difference. Absolutely none whatsoever. I'm not going to say absolutely none whatsoever. I will say the most slightest of difference possible. And this is what I've always thought. This is what I've always thought when I run both of my GPUs. Obviously, like I said, they're running through the same monitor. I'm not changing the color settings within my monitor. So this is me unplugging one system, plugging the other one in. I've recorded them both through OBS. I wanted to make sure that I recorded them through the same capture method. So both through OBS, both using the same. Obviously, they can't use the same encoders because one's made for AMD and one's made for NVIDIA. But I basically ran the game. I removed, obviously, any type of ray tracing because that might interfere. So basically, I'm recording on Alan Wake 2. I'm recording at 4K. I'm using the Ultra preset. And we are using FSR quality on the AMD GPU, and we are using DLSS quality on the RTX 4080. The other thing that I want to go through, again, is another thing that gets said all the time, is that DLSS strips out image quality, or that AMD has better textures and better visuals. It has more on-screen textures. It has a lot more detail and all these stuff. So we're going to go through all of that in side by side. We're going to go through the colors. We're going to go through the image clarity, the details, and let's figure out if it is stripping, if DLSS is removing anything that FSR isn't, because apparently FSR doesn't. For some reason, FSR doesn't remove any details and DLSS strips out details. So let's go through it. Let's hop over to some of my captures and we will go through what we have here. So we have this here. This annoying playback thing is going to annoy me because I can't get rid of that. As soon as I move the mouse, it goes away. But we can have a look at... No, we can't even have a look at the screen without me moving the mouse, because it pops back up. Or is that just me doing the slightest knock of my desk? Maybe it was. So as you can see, we have RTX on the left-hand side. That is obviously the RTX 4080, and on the right-hand side we have Radeon in the top corner. That is the 7900 XTX. As far as colors, you tell me in the comments what difference you see, because as I said, this is the capture using exactly the same method. This is what I have never turned on my AMD GPU and thought to myself, oh my god, wow, that is a difference. The colors, I don't see it. I go in the game and I play it and I think, yeah, this just looks normal to me. If anything, the first thing that I notice will be the reduction in quality if I'm using FSR. But we'll go through the colors first. Now, I do also have another capture where we can go through a full screen to get a better look, and that probably would be the better look. What I would say is, and the only thing that I've ever noticed when I've seen a Radeon image next to a RTX image is the color temperatures. Now, I believe from my time in the painting industry that there is a slight greenish hue over the color spectrum. So I believe that NVIDIA is set to 6500 Kelvin, and that is it. They add in no other anything. It is supposed to be color accuracy. If you try and find any details on the color temperature or accuracy from AMD, I am yet to be able to find it. I believe that they're probably on a very similar spectrum, but with a slight greenish tinge to it, which obviously isn't something you'd normally see in a color temperature spectrum. You'd normally go from a bluish white to a bright white to a yellowish white, which is obviously your cool white to your warm whites. And then you'll get to, like, obviously past yellow, you start to get to more of a reddish tone. So I believe that they add a slight greenish hue. And in some captures, you'll probably see it. I don't know if this game is the best example, but you normally see it in whites. And you probably think, looking at the two cars, which is probably the whitest object that we can see in this, there is a slight different color temperature to this one versus this one. After that, it would be very, very hard to tell the difference. Maybe this lamp here looks a slight bit more orange versus this one, which would also happen, obviously, with that greenish hue. It would add, obviously, a bit of a pop to certain colors. But in the same time, maybe the cloud cover here looks a slightly different hue to this one. I think, obviously, this should be the cleaner, more accurate color. Now, that doesn't mean that you prefer it, because obviously preference of color is each down to the individual. What we can see in this image quite clearly is the difference in FSR versus DLSS. Like I said, we're at 4K quality. So we're not really pushing these much past the limit, but you can obviously see straight out the bat that the image, the quality of her hair compared to this is very blurry compared to this, which is very, very detailed and distinct. And then probably any other object out there. Obviously, this car looks a lot cleaner than this. As far as image stability, we're pretty much stood still, so that's not going to be a huge issue. You can notice some flickering throughout the water there. It's a little bit more cut off in this image, so I don't really want to make a full comparison, but I can't notice anything in that small amount that's shown there. And then you can probably notice a bit of flickering here in whatever these cables are, where these are obviously stable. Other than that, it's a still image, so nothing particularly looks bad in terms of image stability. Probably more down to the case of this is obviously a lot of a cleaner image. This image is quite blurred. It's not terrible, but when you're actually looking at the details, it's probably safe to say that when you look at stuff like these road textures, they are more obvious than on these, where they're obviously a bit more blurred. As far as details, actual details, like I said, the textures stand out more because it's a cleaner image. You can probably read a little bit better. Obviously, these signs down in the distance stand out a bit more cleaner than probably what these do. But that doesn't mean that they're terrible. All these details down here, I don't see anything in this image at all that tells me that DLSS is stripping out any type of image details, anything. And there's not, like, looking at all this brickwork, which is obviously all small detailing, all these lines out here, everything just looks the same but cleaner. Obviously all these trees out here, you can tell that there's more detail in these trees, whereas obviously these are a little bit more blurred. So as far as details, I see nothing. We'll move over to a bigger picture so we can actually get a little bit more information, but I don't see it. So if we load up this video here, this is obviously what we're at, 400 watts. So this is obviously on the Radeon GPU. Obviously, you know, I want to make sure that people understand that I'm not just swapping over FSR and using the RTX 4080. The 4080 doesn't run at over 400 watts, so it's probably a little bit more obvious. And obviously you can tell that that's the clock speeds from my overclocked 7800X3D. So again, like I said, probably just a bit more of a blurry image. If we fast forward to the RTX picture, I mean, you can probably, oh, that does a little bit something funny with the image when you do that. It throws in these little purple dots, and then they go when you let it play. So yeah, probably I can't do that, unfortunately, while I'm recording. But I think you could probably notice as it switches over, where we switch over, probably around about here. When it switches over, you can probably just about make out that there's a little bit of a color change on the car. Not huge, very small, definitely not something that I would write home about, like oh my god, the colors are so different, it's incredible. I can't play with that RTX GPU. It just doesn't have the same colors. I mean, some of these statements are fucking insane. So there we go. I don't really know how much further or what else I can say. Hopefully this clears up a lot of stuff. Like I said, this is going through screen capturing. It is recording. What I am doing is I'm not actually setting up a game capture. I'm setting up a display capture. I've set up a display capture for both of these recordings. So it should be recording what is exactly going to my display. So let me know in the comments what you think. Let me know what details you see stripped out on the NVIDIA GPU, as I'm going to be completely honest, I don't see DLSS stripping out any details. That's an extremely clean and good looking image versus, I'm not going to say it's a bad image. I'd play like that. It's probably alright. I can't remember in this game. I've got a feeling on the AMD GPU you might just be better off dropping some of the settings and actually just playing at native. I can't remember because this was a bit blurry. It's not bad. Some people might like that. I don't know if there was any type of sharpness slider. I know some people might say that with the RTX the image is too sharp. I personally don't think it's too sharp. I don't know if there was any way actually in the game menu of adjusting it or not. I don't know. I mean, you could probably say when you're stood still it might look a bit sharp, but it's not like you just stand like this in a game and just don't move around. So it will obviously, as you're moving around, you're not really going to stand there and stare at anything that looks too sharp. It probably, when moving, it actually helps when you do have a sharp image versus a soft image, because when you're moving with an already soft image, it tends to get softer. So let me know what you think, or let me know, have I done something wrong? I don't believe I've done anything wrong. Like I said, I never noticed this. So again, what you could say is that people are obviously making their own adjustments and then they're making a comparison by their adjustments. I don't know. At the same time, I don't think that's a correct thing to tell people. If you're making your own adjustments and you then can't replicate or you can't figure out how to make those adjustments, whether it be either way, if you're saying that the colors look better on NVIDIA or if you're saying that the colors look better on AMD, whichever way it is, I think you're being probably a little bit disingenuous. I think basically don't run an AMD GPU for years, figure out what the colors, mess around with the colors and say, these are what I like. and then throw a NVIDIA GPU in and then say, oh, these just look trash. And vice versa, the other way around. If you've been running NVIDIA and you figured out what colors work for you and you think that they look great, and then you throw an AMD GPU in and you can't find the way to make those colors work for you, it's probably unfair to make the statement that the AMD colors look trash. Colors are colors. There's plenty of tools on both. You've got tools on your monitor. You have so many ways of adjusting colors that to say that one graphics card over the other graphics card gives superior colors doesn't really make any sense to me. I mean, what they're supposed to actually do is replicate the colors that the game's supposed to be played in. That's what they're supposed to do. So what you need to look further into is, are they replicating the colors of how the game that was supposed to be played? You know, are they replicating the colors that the game was built around? Are you watching back a movie in the colors that the movie was filmed in? That would be 6,500 Kelvin, because generally any of your kind of media is always produced around the 6,500 color accuracy color range. So yeah, as far as DLSS stripping out any details, let me know, see if you saw anything. I think we had a pretty good look in there and we saw nothing. So, or certainly if it was, maybe you could say it was from native, but it certainly wasn't a case of it was stripping out stuff that the FSR was leaving in, because they both look the same. The details were all there. They probably stood out a little bit more. Any type of fine details, I'd say, stood out more with DLSS because it was the sharper image, so they were probably more easily noticed in the sharp image. So I'm going to leave it there, because there's no point dragging this video on any longer. Let me know in the comments what you think. Do you notice a huge difference? Are you making the difference? It's all right saying that you see a big difference in the colors, but are you actually playing with the default colors, or are you changing the colors? Because if you're changing the colors, the reason that you see a difference in the colors is because you're making the difference in the colors, not necessarily what the colors are from default. I don't really know what else to say. Let me know, and I will catch you all in the next one.